video, but it's super potent with information as well. So, welcome to part two. It's Secrets of the Kriya in the Holy Nectar of the Soul series, Cerebral Spinal Fluid and Kundalini Wisdom Science. I am your host, Leah Slagenwhite, but I'm guided by Grand Omnipresent Design. I'm guided by God in all that I say and do. Okay, so the first part of this is the part that I didn't have in the Kundalini Yoga teacher training material. So when you take a training, basically I update all of the materials as new research comes out because I stay pretty on top of this stuff. Dr. Moro Zapatera, I hope I'm saying his name right, um, studies at Harvard and is publishing information about specific to the cerebral spinal fluid and spirituality. And it's some really good stuff. This is not from him, though. This research is mainly from the ancient yogic texts. And I'm reading interpretations of the ancient yogic texts and then sort of translating it and synthesizing it into this. So, whenever you're reading those texts, it'll talk about Soma Rasa. Soma Rasa is in reference to the Soma chakra, which is the chakra of truth. It's actually like a light indigo white color in between the sixth chakra and the seventh chakra. And it represents our ability to discern, our ability to see the truth. I believe from what I've read that the Soma Rasa is actually in reference to the cerebral spinal fluid, the CSF we're talking about, because it's described as the nectar of immortality in classical yoga texts. It's produced in the brain's ventricles, right where the Soma chakra would be, and it protects the nutrients and in the immunity and the spinal cord and the brain. Everything is sitting in one sort of cushion, and our nervous system is in this one singular structure that's connected. But the actual scientific process is that it flows through the four ventricles of the brain, and you can like look this stuff up. I'm sure that the more scientific iterations are out there. I'm speaking more toward what happens on a spiritual, energetic level. So this area contains the pineal gland, the thalamus, the pituitary, and um, uh, this entire key area. Okay, so when we practice the Kriya and the breath, it's causing our body to produce more Agni or more fire. Agni has many uses. Sometimes it's referred to as digestive fire. Sometimes it's referred to as like our actual libido. But just as fire can heat food, it can also burn down a house. Agni is the same way. It's very transformative. It can be described in different ways. And as we release our emotional blocks energetically, emotionally, and mentally through our physical yoga practice, we can seal and absorb more of this life force. We literally can recharge our own batteries. And that's why the bandhas are really key. And I talk about and emphasize Mula Bandha at the base of the spine all the time because this is what keeps the energy in. And the yogis wear turbans. I mean, I'm not a turban wearing yogi. I should, but I'm not a turban wearing yogi. It would just make me really hot. But they wear the turbans to contain the energy within the body. And when we inspire, when we're taking in this gaseous air, the element of Agni begins to move just like an electrical current would. So this energy is sitting at the base of the spine. It's actually very masculine and it comes from the earth and it lives in our hips. And the hips are really the meeting point of the elements of earth, water, and fire. And so when we move our hips in this way, we're actually increasing the amount of Agni, increasing the amount of cerebral spinal fluid that's going to flow, increasing our Shakti creative energy. And that's why I practice primordial yoga. CSF itself is extremely passive. It's in the sixth chakra, the third ventricle, the Soma chakra, feminine energy. It just is what it is. It's actually just a clear fluid. But when we move the Agni from the base with intent, this CSF naturally is going to descend from the third ventricle down the spine. They start to blend, they start to mix. And this leads to an ionization and an electrification of the cerebral spinal fluid. We experience this as an energetic sensation. So once we have this holy fire, this energetic sensation, this charged liquid, there's life force in that liquid. And God presence is in that liquid, that consciousness is in that liquid, that grand omnipresent design that's in plants, that's in anything that's living, water. Our energy becomes magnetized, and this fluid is our own body energy. This fluid is our own body energy that's rising, hence the term Kundalini rising. So the Agni within our body is then made very sacred. It's then made very holy, and it then becomes this nectar. And like we talked about in the last slideshow, Kichari Mudra, when you're actually taking your tongue, lifting it up toward that area in the roof palate, and create it like in that little crevice, actually opening up that crevice for the cerebral spinal fluid to flow downward and descend. Yogis say that it's actually a salty, sweet taste. I've tried to do Kichari Mudra. I don't know if I've ever actually tasted it. I should do it after a primordial yoga session or a Kundalini session. I'm sure I'll get results. So yeah, stay tuned for that. I'll post that video soon. But energetically, this holy fire rises up the Sushumna, and it's following the same pattern as the CSF through the central canal. The same pattern that the CSF goes through when it goes down and up is the same way that Sushumna Nadi, the Pingala and the Ida and the Pingala, and how all of that mixes, the energy is actually mixing. It's not passive though, it's magnetized with pranic life force, which then is classified as Kundalini, two forces, two polarities, two dualities blending into a unification and becoming one. Hence the term Shiva Shakti. Masculine polarity, feminine polarity. When this happens, there's potential for profound experiences. There are many different experiences where we actually incite the production of dimethyltryptamine or this DMT in the brain. And there's also various exit points for the energy. So the yogis consider this like soft spot, like how babies have a soft spot, the point of entry for the soul to come into the body and for the soul to actually exit the body into the oversoul, which is why it links to eternal consciousness. Not necessarily about physical immortality, but it's mostly about our spiritual eternity and what is sacred. So, how do we move this fire? Kriya Yoga, any of the videos that I present on this page, pranayam, breathing techniques, yoga asana, dancing, jumping, exercising, lifting weights, vibration, sound healing, visualize intent, and actually certain lights do activate this to move and to actually become Kundalini. And that was it for part two. So I'm super excited to present part three, which is all about the Kundalini wisdom science and what happens with the cerebral spinal fluid in your brain when you're asleep. So stay tuned for that. I hope you enjoyed this one, yogis.